Welcome to Faye Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast about everything from Jesus to joinery. Tom, I did probably what is considered a big no-no as a woodworker is I bought something instead of making it. So let me preface. So we've got beautiful property here and we've never had a picnic table anywhere we've lived. And so I was going to build one. I was going to go to Home Depot, buy, treated 2x6s and make it. And as I started looking at the price, I'm like, okay, it's going to be probably with tax about $150 just in material, just to make a nice solid picnic table. And so I've been kind of holding it off because I'm cheap. And I get on Facebook and what comes up on Marketplace, but a guy 10 minutes down the road from me that's selling them for $100. He's moving and he's just trying to get rid of stuff. And I messaged him, went out there, checked it out. It was really well built. You could tell it was probably Amish built. And so for those who aren't from the Ohio, Pennsylvania area, Amish are the craftsmen of our area. And so if it's Amish built, it's well built and it's definitely heavy. And so, yeah, for $100, I mean, I can't make it for that. So I bought the picnic table and the best part of it is, and this is just being a guy, right, is that I got home and it's just my wife and I, and, I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. They're not going to help undo take the picnic table off the trailer. I got forks from my tractor. I just picked it up and set it down right where my wife wanted it. And, but yeah, we've had lunch on it once and we had dinner on it. And yeah, we, love having the picnic table. It's a small little things in life, but it's a dual role. And so where it sits at is the 100-yard mark for my shooting range. And so now I can sight in the rifles and stuff right there. But yeah, man, that's been basically my weekend. How's your weekend going?
Man, it has been nothing but bus wraps. That's all I've been doing this week. And next week I've got to do a full side of a bus. And so praise God for providing work that pays the bills. But man, I am sick and tired of climbing up and down ladders doing bus wraps. It feels like all I've done the last week. But yeah,
I saw you do some windows on Instagram.
Oh yeah, and that was an easy job. If I could have one job like that a day, that's all I would ever do. I love doing storefront ones. That one I've got a little step. It's a fold-in step platform that I just flip the legs out and I can step right up on it and stand. It's like standing on the ground. Did that whole entire job off of that. And oh wow, took me less than 4 hours to do that entire storefront.
So, and without divulging numbers, monetarily, how does that compare to doing a bus? Like if you could do something like that compared to doing a whole bus wrap? It
equates about the same hourly rate, but at the end of the day, I don't feel exhausted. My feet don't hurt because I'm not up and down on a ladder all day. And so That's really the time saving factor and the enjoyment factor. Most of the time when I do a storefront, it's under an awning. So I'm not out in the sun, but yet I'm still outside. So I get to kind of be outside versus when I do in the buses, I'm trapped in this building and it's a metal building. So it's just not a real pleasant experience for me. I just don't enjoy them, but
right. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious on how that would equate, but
yeah.
Hey, at least you're getting the jobs in to provide and
that's it.
Pay that God. College tuition.
That's it. And speaking of college, my daughter finished this semester on Thursday, so we have actually got to spend some time going for walks, bike rides, playing some pickleball, and man, it's been nice. She's like a total different person now because she's been studying to midnight all semester. She had physics 2, which she got an A in. And she's supposed to have her final back for genetics tomorrow. And if she gets an A in that class, it'll be another semester with a 4.0. And
that's awesome.
So, yeah.
It's funny. And I was never good at math in school. It's just not my strong suit. However, when I took physics and I had to apply calculus and physics to where you did things that like made sense in my mind, I excelled at it, but I couldn't do it like just in calculus, like do this problem. Nah, I'd rather not. But if you put it in a context of physics, I was really good at it. So it's just kind of an interesting thing, but that's awesome, man. It's sounds like she's a smart cookie, and she'll be getting into her PT school before you know it.
Yep. One more semester. She'll graduate in December, and then hopefully next year on the PT school. So
that's awesome.
And then 3 years after that, I'll feel like I have a life because I won't have to pay for tuition no more.
Yeah, have a little bit extra cash. Awesome. Well, before we roll into the next section of the podcast and introduce our guests, just want to say thank you guys that support us on Patreon and all of you that listen. We appreciate it. And if you want to support the podcast, you can do so on patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. You can also give us a 5-star review on Apple, and then just pray for the podcast. Prayers go a long way. We serve a mighty God, and we believe that this podcast is ordained by him. So thank you all that are listening. And Tom, I'll hand this one off to you. Who do we got on the podcast? And
so I want to say it was last summer I was listening to, I believe it was Making It Your Way podcast. Not sure which podcast it was. And I heard this guest on there, and they were talking about they were from Colorado. And I was like, man, an artist from Colorado. I've got to go look them up, see what their artwork is like. And Julie just makes I love the mountains. Anybody knows me, I'm a mountain person. My place is in the hills, and I love artwork that relates to the mountains. And I saw her artwork, started following her. I knew there was something different about her, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. And then one day she posted something on Instagram. Should I share my full story? And I responded, absolutely yes. I didn't know what her story was. She didn't say it was about Christ, but she said that, and I said it might impact somebody, so share it. And a few days later, she started sharing. I was like, we have got to get her on the podcast. So without further ado, Julie Brough from Modstik Designs here in Colorado. Welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Julie, and that's just so wild to me that you happen to see that post when I put it out there. I didn't realize that that's where, or how we connected at all. So that's pretty cool. I am in Evergreen, Colorado, and I'm an artist. I create large or small wall hangings out of reclaimed wood, and I work with epoxy resin and just really stick to this mountain design and a lot of things with the sky. I do different techniques and stuff with that. I'm a single mom, so I've got 2 daughters who are 8 and 9 years old. And yeah, we're just living life up here and loving it in Evergreen.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So were you born and raised in Evergreen? You spend your whole life there?
No, I was born near Evergreen, just maybe 40 minutes away. So I grew up in Arvada, and then through college and everything, I've lived at various different places, but Colorado's always been home, and especially the mountains. I've always wanted to live here. So it's a huge blessing to get back here and get to do that.
That's fantastic. Well,
absolutely.
So where did you go to college at?
I went to Calvary Chapel Bible College.
Yes.
Yeah.
Calvary Chapel. I love it.
Yeah. My parents are totally a product, their marriage is a product of the Jesus movement. Their salvation and their story of how they got together is from the Jesus revolution, I guess is what it's called. So yeah, God put it on my heart at a young age that I wanted to be a missionary. So I went to Bible college in Marietta, California, and then graduated from Hawaii. So I have my degree in biblical theology through Bible college.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I did not know that. I mean, I just thought you went to art school with all that amazing art you did.
No formal art training or teaching or anything for me.
Wow.
Love it. Well, maybe we'll get in some theological conversations. I also have a degree in theology and Bible, so
okay.
I'd love it. But that's awesome. I've been seeing a lot more of the Calvary Chapel stuff around, especially since the Jesus Revolution movie came out, and that kind of put a spotlight on it and whatnot. So,
man. Yeah, I did. I enjoyed that movie. I think my mom got baptized at Pirates Cove or maybe somewhere. I don't know. She was in California when all this was happening. And my dad came to salvation listening to Chuck Smith on the radio And then they planted a church. Calvary Chapel planted a church in Denver, and my parents met there. So,
wow. So
yeah.
obviously you grew up in a Christian home then, since you've told us that. So tell us about, your salvation experience and your relationship with Christ from a child up until now.
Yeah. So I was, there was never a day in my life that I didn't know about Jesus. My parents loved the Lord. I have two older brothers. They raised us in the Lord too, just really encouraging that. And I believe I got saved at a Christian camp that I went to when I was like 13 years old, and just really remembered hearing about Jesus, but there was something different that happened. There was like an altar call or something was going on. And I just remember dropping to my knees. Like I could feel the Holy Spirit so much calling me to him, and in that moment. And that's when I gave my life to the Lord. But my whole story has so many twists and turns that eventually later in my life, I recommitted my life to the Lord. So yeah, I don't really know where to start with all of it.
Just share what's on your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I guess I'll just dig into it. So yeah, I was raised in a Christian home, and then went to a Christian high school. And after a trip to Israel, I got baptized in the Jordan River, which was amazing. Felt the call to missions on my heart, and decided I wanted to go to Bible college, which my parents supported me in doing. I was a little rocky coming out of high school. I was kind of in a rebellious stage, which I think is probably pretty normal. I almost didn't go to Bible college, but I decided to go. And when I was there, I met my husband in our first semester, and we fell in love. He was a missionary kid from Mexico, and like in my mind, was like the perfect story, the perfect situation. This is what I wanted to do. But around this time, I had been diagnosed with a disease called endometriosis, which is a disease that affects reproductive organs, and it's characterized by like extreme pain and infertility. And like I had no idea what I was getting into with this. It was impacting my life a little bit then, but not as severe as it would end up impacting it. So we moved to Mexico, and we did some missions work there with his family for a year. And then we moved back. We had a challenging time in our marriage when we were there. And so we moved back to Colorado, and I knew that I wanted to get pregnant, but it was likely going to be a challenge for me. And so we kind of knew that going into it. But by the grace of God, I actually got pregnant really easily, and I had my first daughter, Nora. And yeah, that was great. But the disease and the pain of endometriosis continued to like get progressively worse after that. And so decided to have another kid, because what could possibly be better than when you're struggling and sick and have a toddler? You should just throw in another baby, right? Like, because that makes total sense. So we had 2 kids, and everything just kind of got progressively worse, and eventually led to me having to get a hysterectomy when I was 26 years old. And that was really devastating to me. I wasn't really done having kids. I just felt so like pushed into these choices that I didn't anticipate making when I was in my 20s. And I felt really angry at God. I felt like I didn't understand why this was happening to me. I didn't know why he wouldn't heal me. Like I wrestled with so many questions, and I kind of spiraled into so much depression and darkness during this season. I lived every single day in pain, and there just wasn't a lot of like relief from that. And my marriage started to suffer really bad through that. And eventually, after my hysterectomy and everything, our marriage fell apart. And that was like, so that was the darkest that I've ever been. Like, I just felt like I couldn't handle any of the pain. I couldn't handle anything that I was dealing with. And then I felt betrayed on top of it. And honestly, just kind of was like, I don't know, God, like, I don't see your good plans for my life. And I made so many poor choices in that. And a lot of them were just like, all right, God, I know that you're there. I know that you're God. I believe that you're God. Like, that's about all I could say. But like, I ended up kind of just walking away from him and doing it my way, doing my own thing. And through my divorce, I fell into a relationship that was really unhealthy. And, there were so many labels and things that were stuck on me during this time, that I was an adulterer, that I was, I don't know, I a drug addict, like just so many things because of where I was in this darkness. And some of them were based on truth, but they weren't really defining who I was. But I hated myself so much in this season. And I remember just like being broken. And there was this specific situation. I had moved in with this guy that I was dating, and I was just broken and crying on the bed, feeling so lost and so broken and so far away from the Lord. And I heard the song, and this was completely out of genre for what was on TV at the time, but in the other room, the TV was playing music, and the song Reckless Love by Corey Asbury came on. And it was like, there's no mountain I won't climb up, no shadow I don't remember all the words exactly, but like, there's nothing that is going to stop him from coming after me. And he was coming to, like, I felt him. He was like, I'm fighting for you. Like, I want you to come home. Nobody else in my life, it felt like, was fighting for me. And I felt that from him so much, just this like reaching to me in my darkness, in my backslidden, in my, how far away I was from him. And, it just he grabbed a hold of my heart, and it didn't all change right away, but I felt him moving. And I made a really big decision that I was going to stop where I was at, and I was going to repent from my life choices, that in this dark space that I was, and making all these horrible choices. And I kind of just showed up on my parents' doorstep after being away and just kind of doing my own thing for a while. And I was just broken. And I was like, I don't want this. I don't want to go down this road anymore. Like, I want to come home, and I want to come home back to Jesus. And, I surrendered my life back to him, and he just came so close to me. Like, for the entire year, it was 2020 when this happened. So everything shut down, and he just came so close to me, and I started to rebuild this relationship with him on this new foundation. And in that, I guess I should reverse, because this is still a little bit about my woodworking business. But through the sickness, when I was still married, I started to create artwork to kind of cope with the pain that I was dealing with. And that's where this whole business started from. And when I came back to the Lord, it was like, this is the only thing I want to do. And he just gave me vision, and he gave me passion for this. And it gave me an outlet to process the pain and just the rejection and the betrayal and the hardship and everything that I was going through. And he just used it in such a mighty way in my life. And then he blessed it, and it became a business, and people started buying my artwork. And I still can't even believe, looking back, that's how it all happened. Like, single moms living up in Evergreen typically don't make a living being an artist. Like, there's so many things that should have probably gone sideways with that. So I started healing, and God has restored me physically. He's restored my mind. He's restored my heart, my soul. Like, he's put me back together in just such a beautiful way. It's so much better than I ever was before. And so that's my story.
Wow.
Whoa,
Girl,
yeah.
That is powerful. Man, I tell you, I just love hearing people's story, because God touches all of us in a different way. Me and Will both happen to also, get saved at a church camp, and we have a connection there with that, just like you. But like you, I went through a period of darkness where I left and then came back at about age 40. And so, so I was away for a much longer period than what you were. But man, that is so powerful. Wow.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking of, there's a term, I don't know if I coined it, but I use a lot in ministry, and I still use to today, is that sometimes you have to go through tragedy to see the full majesty of God. And your life, and the thing that's beautiful about it is I think you've come to a place now that you realize that you're not defined by what you do, but you are defined by what he's done for you. Right.
Oh yeah.
And so, man, it's so powerful. Just all you've been through. And I'm sure through that whole story, there's so much more, and that you could probably look back and see God's hand on certain things that in the moment you don't see. I know my story, I see that as well, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure through all that time, I remember seeing a story when you got your new truck, how your dad went to Texas with you to get it. And I can just almost visualize your parents on their knees praying for you through that whole dark period and never giving up on you. So that's just, man, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. They're awesome. They live about 7 minutes from me, depending on how fast you drive. And I could not imagine not having their support, but there was brokenness. There was brokenness in my relationship with my parents and everywhere I looked, it seemed like there was brokenness in my relationship, my brothers, everything. And the way that the Lord has worked those back together to create them stronger and more stable and more beautiful is just like beyond anything that I could have imagined. I really thought like I blew it for my life. I really thought there was no redemption. Like the enemy had me so beat down that when I came back to the Lord, it started with, wait, so does Jesus love me still? Like I just started there, the really basic, things, foundational things. And like, yeah, I can look back and just see the work that had to be done for a new foundation to be built so that I could withstand the storms of life, and this stronger version of me. And yeah, it's really beautiful now, but it wasn't always fun going through it. I didn't always enjoy it.
Well, there's a verse that says, for the moment, things seem, how's it go? For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it produces the fruit of righteousness. And so sometimes that stuff that we go through, it hurts. It's a struggle, but then we get down the road and we can look back and see how God was working through it all. And it's just amazing. And now I know that you play piano or maybe some other instruments in your church. So tell us a little more about like how God's used you, because I know you play in the praise band, I believe.
Yeah, I'm on the worship team at my church and I love it. It's like the highlight of my week. So I found this incredible church. This is like a big part of my story too. It was like after I'd come back to the Lord, after 2020, like church was back in person and everything. And I was looking for a church and I walked into this one and there was just something so different about it. And God has given me this church family that is unlike anything I've ever had before. Like on any given week, I see somebody different from my church or talk to or whatever, that we just have this really tight family relationship there. And I had played piano when I was younger and kind of just like reached out to the worship team. But I was so broken. Like people probably didn't even know my name at church. I would come in, I would sit in the back. I looked like I didn't want to make any friends. Like I probably just was there. Like it was just a season of healing and people were curious about me, but I didn't really form any great relationships. And then I wanted to play piano. And then the Lord just brought me out of my shell and through doing that and into the, like, just so close into the heart of worship that it became such a light in my life to be able to share that with people and to grow. And then I had a worship team of people and we all have grown together as a family and in our skill too. And things have changed over the years, but it's just been a really special place to be.
That's awesome. I'm a musician as well, and actually played this morning at church. I played drums, so I've been playing for 25 years, I think. But it's funny how music was a big part in the healing for my wife and I. So when we moved to Tennessee, I was pastor of a church up here, had a lot of issues, and we left, moved to Tennessee, And we were there a little while, went to a next class, and I met the worship pastor. Mind you, it's a mega church, big church. And I met him and I said, hey, I'd like to play on the worship team. And he knew my story because I had talked with the senior pastor, and he looks at me and says, no, you need to heal. And I want you to take 6 months to just come and be fed. And then we'll have a conversation after 6 months.
Wow.
And that was a big part of like just being able to come and worship, and then eventually getting on the worship team and playing drums and being part. I know the family, there's just something about it. Now we go to a church that's like, if we have 100 people, we're lucky. So it's a little bit different. But that's awesome. So I did see, I think, a reel that you posted, or maybe a story of you doing some worship stuff. So it was awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, gosh, when you're healing and you are, I don't know, in the place that I was, the Lord used the worship music so much in my life, so powerfully, that now it's like, I don't want to live without it. Like, I used to listen to other music and stuff, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But like when I'm in the shop and I'm creating and I'm doing my artwork and stuff, that is the main thing I listen to is worship music. A lot of people ask me what I listen to, and I'm like, oh, it's probably not like what you think, but it is just such a worshipful experience for me. And like my process with my artwork is so interconnected to my spiritual journey that it's impossible to really have one without the other. My inspiration comes from the Lord and his creation and the healing that he's brought in my life, that I don't know, it is a form of worship for me. And it is a way that I abide, and a way that I continue to walk closely with him. And I'm lucky enough to have that be my profession and like my career. So
that's awesome. There's actually a church near you guys that's one of my favorite worship teams is Red Rocks Worship over there in Denver. Red Rocks, wherever that's at.
Like them.
Yeah, they're pretty good. But worship is those who are musicians. It's funny because people ask me to like, oh, what kind of music you listen to? Honestly, all I listen to is worship music. And now I listen to some rock stuff, but most of it is either instrumental or, Christian rock or whatever. But it's I play drums to worship God. And that's something that, like, unless you know me, when I'm playing drums, it's not to play for my abilities or my talents. Like, through that, I'm worshiping. And so music and worship is a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah. How was it for you, like being told that you needed to heal first? And like, were you able to, did that bother you, or were you able to sort of sit and like focus on heal? Did that set you straight on what you needed to focus on, or what?
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting time. So give a quick backstory. When we knew that we were going to move to Tennessee, my brother-in-law lived down there. And so we're going to move near him, my wife's brother. And being a pastor and somebody that's very serious about my faith, even though we were going through a hard time, and we actually hated the church. There's a period of time, season, where my wife and I were hurt by the church, and so, but I knew it was important for us to find a place. And so I started going online, living in Pennsylvania, and looking up. We were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is just south east of Nashville, and mega church in Murfreesboro. And there's like 5 or 6 churches that I found. And what I would do is I would call each church and say, hey, I want to talk to a pastor about your theology, because I want to make sure I'm not going to a church that's, snake handling or something like that. That's right. And so I called, I think, 6 churches, and only one church called me back, and it was the lead pastor of the Experience Community Church in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so there was a little bit of a connection. The pastor and I talked for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I told him my story, and he prayed over me. And when we get there, we hadn't talked to the pastor. We went to that next class a month after moving there. So this is like 3 months span. The senior pastor remembered my name and hit the worship pastor on the shoulder and said, that's the guy I was telling you about. And that's when Kyle, the worship pastor, was like, man, you need to heal. And so it was an interesting time for me because my whole life, and part of my story is because I wasn't really raised in the church, but when I started going to the church, I was always at the church. And so the church was where I felt safe and where I, had a place of healing. And so I was always involved, and to be told to not be involved was really hard for me. But that was actually, and I remember several times, because there was some other stuff that was going on, that I was on my knees, just bawling my eyes out with my arms up, praising the Lord. And I needed that time. And so it was hard for me in the sense that I'm a very hands-on kind of person, and I want to be involved, but I was told like, hey, you need to just rest. And after that 6 months, I had to go through the audition process, and which was really hard for me because I was the only drummer in my hometown. And so I, was always the best drummer. And I moved to Nashville, and I realized I'm the worst drummer, and I had to relearn everything about playing drums. And so that was the whole thing. But yeah, it was hard for me. It was very hard to rest. But once, probably after a month, finally kind of let go. And there's a lot to that church, kind of like you said, it was special. There's just something different. And, one of the things honestly was that it was an expository teaching church. And so my wife and I, instead of being preached sermons that the pastor made up, we were being fed the word of God every week. It was just breaking down whole books of the Bible. And so that was a huge healing part for us. But so are you still part of a Calvary Chapel then, or are you?
I am not. I've been around. I've hopscotched to a couple of Calvary Chapels. This church was not affiliated with Calvary Chapel at all. I think it was previously a Baptist church, but it's just been really special. It's non-denominational, and I would say, the community there is really great. I do also spend a lot of time throughout my week, and also like with working and everything, I listen to a lot of other teachings and stuff, and try to keep up with other pastors and stuff. There's a lot to learn, and a lot of other styles of teaching and stuff. And I kind of am not limiting myself to just one. So that's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Tom is as well. I listen to Matt Chandler. He's out of
my favorite teacher.
Yeah.
My favorite one.
I've seen him live a few times, and he is by far one of my most, probably my favorite teacher. Just his dynamics and his ability to transcend situations and topics. I don't think anybody does it like him today.
No. He is bold. He doesn't shy away from any of the hard truths, but he's also just he's compassionate and has a way of like getting to the heart of what somebody might be experiencing, and like he's very skilled at bringing it home.
Yeah. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, he did a sermon about the implications of that and why we should be celebrating. And I saved it because it was the most well-spoken sermons on pro-life I've ever heard in my life.
Really?
And so, but I've been listening to him for years. I've read his book, Explicit Gospel, and I just ordered one. He had another book out he just put out, but yeah, he's good stuff.
He has a podcast where he interviews people that have gone through tough times, and I forget what the podcast is called, but it is fantastic, man. It's a no holds barred podcast. Like, bring your story and tell about the tragedy you went through. Matt, I'll have you on, Julie. I'm telling you, your story's powerful. But it's a really good podcast.
No, just kidding.
But that's how I am when I'm in my shop. I'm either listening to other preachers that I follow, or in podcast form, or I'm listening to praise music. It's just something about it.
I found that I can only listen to conversations or like sermons while I'm driving. So I have a 45-minute commute to work. And so because I'm focusing on the road and there's no other distractions, and so I can listen to the sermon, I can listen to music anywhere. But like if I'm in the shop or on the tractor or the mower, I can't pay attention to a sermon. But yeah, given that I have a 45-minute commute each way, I can listen to 2 a day. So
Nice.
That's awesome. That's pretty much how I am when I'm traveling. Like when I have to go work in Aspen or Telluride, I've got a 2.5 hour drive and I knock out 2 podcasts. And I know it sounds odd, but I find that listening to conversations keeps me awake driving down the road more so than music. I don't know why, but
Yep. Absolutely.
When my dad and I were road tripping back from Texas after we picked up the truck, we listened to this podcast because you'd already reached out to me, and I was like, oh, I want to check this out. And you have no idea, like the very specific way that I felt so seen by this podcast existing. Like this is such a specific thing of, makers, creators, artists, and faith, like putting the 2 of those together. It's like that. Those are my people. I've been looking for my people and I found them. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
So how'd your dad like it?
Oh, he loved it.
Did he? Good.
It's weird to think having a podcast that people listen to it, and we still get emails and messages and stuff from people all the time. And I see the numbers with the analytics, and it's just weird to think that people listen to me talk or Tom talk. It's like, it's just strange, but yeah, that's awesome. Any specific episode that stuck out to you, remember that, or any guests that we had on?
Oh man, I can't remember his name. I'm trying to even remember details of his story, but I think we listened to 2 of them. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the details of it. So
yeah,
if I think of it, I'll let you know.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Well, tell us about Modstik Designs. How did Modstik Designs come into creation? The name, how you developed your style of art, and because I love your art. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, it was just so wild how it all happened. I was, going through the depression and the pain, and I was just like, I want to do something kind of out there to get my mind off of the amount of pain I'm going through. And that's my ex-husband was a landscaper. He had lots of power tools and stuff. And I was like, I want to learn how to use these. So I would sort of think of a design and he would teach me how to put it together. And that's kind of how it started. And then I put things together and my friends would encourage me to sell. And so I started putting things on Facebook and whatever. And it was around Christmas time and it just snowballed. And then I didn't have like an order after that. It was just like just a thing that things started rolling in. I wasn't dependent on it for income at first. And then when I went through my divorce, I was, and then I built it into a real business. But it's just been kind of a crazy process to see that happen. And with each custom order or custom request, I would say my style changes a little bit, or I learn a new skill. But one of the most prominent designs that I came up with was the Starry Night Sky design, which is kind of a crazy story, which I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I had just been in this healing and so raw. Like if you've ever been in healing like that, you're just so raw and anything that goes wrong just hurts 10 times more. And I was having a rough day for whatever reason. And it was late at night and I just wanted to go for a walk, which is probably not recommended up here in the mountains, but I did anyways. So I just went into the woods next to my house and I had my headphones in and I laid on the ground and that song, So Will I, at 1,000 billion. Why can't I think of all the lyrics of it? But if the stars were made.
What's her name? She has blonde hair.
That's Taya.
No. If the stars were made to worship, so will I.
Yeah.
Okay.
So will I. Yeah, I don't know. And I just was looking up at the stars and it was just everything was dark. and the stars were so beautiful. And I felt like the Lord was just ministering to my heart and telling me like, I'm going to make something beautiful out of this darkness for you. And so I don't know. Sometimes I think people think I hyper spiritualize my artwork. Maybe I do, but like that really stuck with me. And I processed through that. Like, what does it mean to be in a dark night of the soul? What does it mean like to be a light, or like just processing and focusing on these things? And so much of my work is repetitive because I'm remaking things or whatever. And it just became like kind of a meditative thing for me. Like this is the God who created the heavens. Like he can handle my life. He can take care of me, and he's going to take the mess of my life and turn it into something beautiful. And I just started with like that little mustard seed of faith in that. And then it just grew, and then I started working with epoxy, and I started coming up with other designs, and it was a really big hit. People really resonated with the starry night sky look. And so that was really great for my business. But each step of the way, it's really been something that the Lord's ministered to my heart that I've expressed in some way through my artwork.
That's amazing. That the person I was thinking, I think the song was written by Hillsong, but Tori Kelly, she did an acoustic rendition of that song.
Oh yeah, that was incredible.
Okay.
Oh man, I listen to it all the time. That song, and then also Cody Carnes, In My Presence. I think it's the name of it, where he talks about being at Jesus' feet, never wanting to leave. Those two songs I can listen to over and over and over sometime. But
yeah.
But you also recently did one where you did the Northern Lights in one of your. That was really cool too.
Yeah, it's been fun to kind of try to figure that one out. That one's tricky with epoxy, but I think I figured out a way to do it. But some of those things are just custom requests that people wanted. But something about the sky really captivates me, and I love expressing that through using epoxy as the medium.
So a few weeks ago, parts of Colorado were able to see the Northern Lights. Were you able to see it over there?
I was, but only through my camera lens. So it was wild. There was like maybe a tinge of pink, but then I would take a picture and the whole sky was like this purpley pink color. It was like straight out of my artwork, like the colors that I use when I do these like galaxy looking things. So that was really wild to see. Did you guys see them?
So
Yeah.
I didn't know about it until the day after, and I started seeing all these posts, and then my wife told me. I was like, man, I did not know it was coming. I never watched the news. I pretty much listen to podcasts or listen to music, and I kind of been taking a break from social media and stuff, and so I didn't know about it until after I saw these beautiful pictures. I was like, man, that makes me mad. I missed it. But
Yeah.
So it's funny you say that, Julie, with the photos. So that you can see them from where we're at. And so we live out in the country, like we're in the sticks, right? And everybody's posting pictures on Facebook of seeing the Northern Lights around us. My wife and I go outside, right? There's no town within miles of us, and there's no, like telescopers love where we're at because there's no bleed or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see it, like maybe a tinge of purple. And my wife and I like, what? And some friends of ours, probably 3 miles down the road from us, are posting these pictures of this gorgeous purples and blue. I'm like, what in the world? And so my wife and I never seen it, but if it showed up on the camera, I never pulled my phone out to do anything there. So maybe that was a trick.
Yeah, I guess your camera lens lets in a little bit more light, so more than your eye, so you can see it better through your camera.
I was wondering why the camera picked it up and our eye didn't. Okay, so it has to do with how much light came in.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. A guy I work with is a huge, I always get the word term mixed up, astrology. He's the guy that he has a $10,000 camera set up to take pictures of stars.
Okay.
I mean, he's into that kind of stuff. And like when the eclipse happened, he took the day off and was like, all that. But he was showing us pictures that he took with his camera of it. And it was like, holy moly, that's gorgeous. So, and we were in the 100% total thing of the eclipse. And so like hundreds of thousands of people came into where we're at to see
wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Did you see it? Did you witness the total?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it was pretty. It was really eerie, and so behind our house we have a big field that goes back, and then it hits the wood line. And my wife and I, my kids were outside, and we were watching it start to cover up the sun, and it was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, it went pitch black, and like this, it took it like 3 minutes, went pitch black and stayed pitch black for about 3 minutes, and then slowly started to get light out. But when it did that, the wind stopped, the peepers came out in the woods in the field. It got cold, and it was like the weirdest, most surreal thing I've ever seen. And then you look up and you see the moon, and there's like the moon is glowing, and it's like this really weird thing. Yeah, my wife and I, and my 4-year-old, was like, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm gonna go back inside," because it got so dark so fast. It was like, it was a really cool experience. I'm glad that we were able to experience it. My company actually shut the place down at noon and let everybody go home, so we were able to
Nice.
go home and see it. But yeah, so
Wow.
pretty cool stuff. So how the epoxy stuff that you do, are you like a total boat person, or?
Yep, I'm affiliated with Total Boat.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. We met them at Workbench Con. I talked to a couple of people from there. They seem like they're pretty cool people.
Yeah. I'm so thankful for them. They're really supportive of the people who use their products. Like, they've been really supportive of me, and their product is really good. I don't know if you guys used it, but it's been the best. I've tried several before I found out about them. So yeah, I've been really happy with that.
No, I've actually been the I'm kind of like Bourbon Moth. I'm the anti-epoxy guy, so
Okay.
I haven't used any of it. So
Yeah.
I actually want to learn. And so one of these days I'm going to drive over the mountain and get you to teach me.
I would happily do that.
All right. I'm going to take you up on that one day, because you're probably it takes me about 3.5 hours, 3 hours, 45 minutes to make it to Littleton. So you're probably only about 3 hours, maybe 3:15 from me.
Yeah,
So,
that's not bad. And it's a beautiful drive.
isn't it?
too.
But you know what's amazing? I just made a trip, and you guys got a lot of late season snow. And the funny thing is, like, coming through up the western slope all the way to Vail, even Vail didn't have hardly anything on their slopes. And then as soon as you came over Vail Pass, like it was just snow everywhere. Copper Mountain looked like it was mid-season, still full of snow. Yeah, it was total coverage. I was like, man, I want to go snowboarding. It literally was open on the way coming back. I came back on y'all's final ski season. I was like, man, look at all the snow. But yeah, it was weird because like the previous season, we got over 15 foot out here. It was phenomenal. Like there was an area on Powderhorn where they had to cordon it off and not let people ski through it because the lift went so close to the snow that if somebody came up under it, they could have hit somebody's skis that was riding the lift. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. But this year, y'all got all the late season snow. It was pretty amazing.
Oh, I had the best skiing, the best snowboarding ever in my life this year. It was great.
I love it. How long have you been snowboarding?
Well, I started when I was a kid. I don't even remember when exactly. I started out on skis and then I switched to snowboard probably when I was in middle school because it was so much cooler. And then I didn't really do much. There was a solid decade of my life that I was sick and in pain and I didn't do hardly anything. And that was one of the things I definitely couldn't do. And so I picked it back up a few seasons ago and it was so crazy because like I thought I was going to forget all of it. It was like riding a bike first off, but my body had healed. So it was better than before. Like I was able to like ski a whole day, like snowboard the whole day and not, collapse afterwards and be in pain or whatever. So it's been really exciting the last 5 years to just explore life again, to hike and run and work really hard and create and do all these things. So it's been really fun. That was extra for your question.
No, that's cool.
That's awesome.
What resort do you go to the most?
I got an Icon Pass this season, because I have some friends in my church that I go up with their family. And so we did Mary Jane the most, probably Mary Jane Winter Park. We went up to Steamboat, and then we did Copper.
I love Copper. Copper's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish that the Icon Pass had a resort over here to where I wish that our place was part of the Icon Pass, because then that way I could, but it's such a long drive for me to go to Steamboat. It's about 3.5 hours. Or if I come over, if I were to get an Epic Pass and go over to Breck or Vail or any of those other ones, it's just such a long drive. And when I can go to my place for 35 minutes away and then not wait in line, it's just like, that makes sense. So,
yeah.
Right, so noob, non-Coloradoan, non-snowboarder, what's the best place in Colorado? Like, you guys are saying all these names, like you're just throwing off Steamboat Copper. Like, where's like the pinnacle of like, if I wanted to go snowboarding in Colorado, where's the best?
So I think it depends. Number one, it depends on the time of the season, because like say Telluride, you've heard of Aspen and Telluride and Steamboat and all them. They get snow at different times of the year. So like if you're filthy rich, then you just go to wherever it has the best snow. I would probably say like Steamboat would be. Now, if you talk to rich, snooty people, then they're going to tell you Aspen. You could not pay me to go snowboarding in Aspen. Have you ever been there?
I have actually surprisingly gone once, and I only because I got a free ticket to go.
First of all, the tickets are ridiculous, and just walking around the town, the people's noses are all stuck up in the air, and dude, it's just insane. There's so much money up there, they cannot relate to us normal people.
And we want to apologize. Apologize for any Aspen listeners. This isn't directed towards you, but if you are one of them, well, we can have a talk about being humble.
Okay, so I'm not saying there wasn't any night. I've gone up there, done work. It's like its own world up there.
Yes.
And put it this way, while I was up there working, I was doing this job for a pop-up store. And first of all, I got there and the company was out of New York. They came out here and set up a store for 4 days. So that lets you, and I'm talking, they went all out. So that lets you know what the price of things was. But when I got there, the graphics that had been sent didn't fit the place. And so I gave them ideas on how I could fix it with what they had and meet their timeline. And then they had another vehicle they wanted me to do, but it didn't show up until 4 hours later. So I had to sit around for 4 hours, and they paid me for it. But while I was wasting 4 hours, I was like, man, I am freezing. It was in the middle of the winter. And so I walked in this coffee shop. I should have known not to order anything when there was no menu, but I ordered a cup of coffee. Dude, $6 for the worst cup of coffee I have ever had. But I had already ordered it. So I paid for it and I took it. And then I was so irritated the whole time. I was like, this is the worst tasting coffee that I've ever had. And I just paid $6 for it. But I walked around the town to kill time. And I love art. There's one art studio that I walked in. When I walked in, I said, look, is it okay if I look around? I said, I could tell you right now, I can't afford anything in here. I just love art. And the guy, he says, I can't afford anything in here either. He said, come on in. Dude, I was looking at artwork. I was like, wow, that is amazing. I was like, how much is that? He said, $15,000, $25,000. I was like, wow. And then the pop-up store that I was doing the work for, was in, and I asked him, I said, man, y'all have really nice quality stuff. I said, is this stuff handmade? She said, everything is handmade. And of course, then with organic wool. And I'm like, how do they know what the lamb ate? But, you know, but I wear stocking caps because I'm bald headed. And they had these really nice ones. And I asked the lady, I was like, how much are your stocking caps? Guess how much it was.
I want to say 50.
How about you, Will? What do you think?
Maybe 120.
Okay. $425 for a stock. I buy mine 3 for $10. I mean, I was like, you have got to be kidding. So when I got home that night, I told my wife about it, and we got on this company's website and started looking. Dude, they had jackets that were $25,000. Snow boots that were $8,500.
I gotta tap into that market. I gotta get up there.
Me too. I'm like, snow boots. I was like, I would not wear a pair. I'd be scared to wear a pair of shoes that cost that much money, much less walk in the snow in them. Mm-hmm. I was like, what do these people do for a living to afford $8,500 snow boots? I mean, I about have a heart attack when I bought my Sorels on sale for like $160, you know?
Well, it's funny. If you listen to Dave Ramsey, he always says ratios, right? And so I've heard him talk before, like, for him to go out and buy a new Corvette would be like you and I maybe going to buy a burger. You know what I mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just that ratio thing. It's like, I can afford 5 guys, right? And he goes out and buys a Corvette. Yeah. It's just that, places like that, Aspen, that's where your top tech executives and your big, Fortune 500 execs and all the hedge funds and all that. That's where they're all going.
And a lot of rich people from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
You would be amazed how many like people from India and China and Japan and all these other countries have 10,000 square foot vacation homes that they come to 2 weeks a year.
Interesting.
It is crazy, man. I mean, you see these big, huge mansions, but yeah, it's a different world.
You know what brought that all on the map was the movie Dumb and Dumber.
Well, that's the way I feel when I go up there.
Right. But, awesome. So, Julie, what do you got going on in the shop? What's on your workbench right now?
I'm actually in a little bit of a lull right now, which is always scary and weird. But like coming out of winter, I don't know how business is for you guys, but coming out of winter is like the worst. So it's like, but it's nice because you get this calm before it gets really chaotic for summer festivals and all that stuff. So I'm thinking about starting to build my inventory for the upcoming festivals. Now would be a good time for that. But I've had some really creative pieces that I've worked on recently that have been custom orders from people. But one of them was a Mesa Verde piece. I don't know if you guys have been to Mesa Verde, you know that was really challenging for me to make. I was like, I have never once thought of putting this in art form or like being the one to build it. So that was fun to figure out. And then another one that incorporated like a metal print. So like the artwork was behind the photo, and the artwork was a mountain that was significant to these people that, and just some other symbolic things. And then I added their metal prints to the foreground of the piece. And so it's kind of like a really fancy frame around it. So yeah, that's been fun. But you had asked me earlier what Modstik meant, and I keep thinking I need to come back to that and explain it. So Modstik is a combination of modern and rustic. I just put those words together.
That makes sense. I was wondering, I figured the name had meaning in some way, but I couldn't figure it out.
Well, it's funny how that works. Like Flatwoodworks, we lived on Flatwoods Road.
Okay.
And so when I was trying to come up with a name for my Instagram, my buddy Tim, who listens to the podcast, he encouraged me. He's like, dude, you need to do an Instagram. I'm like, I don't know the Instagram. And I was trying to come up with a name. And I says, what do you think about Flatwoods or Flat Woodworks? He's like, that's pretty catchy, actually. And it's funny because our first house in Tennessee was on Kirkwood Drive, and then the second house was on Flatwoods. And so the wood being a woodworker and stuff. But sometimes the simplest things, right, kind of just stick. And Tom literally lives in the valley of a mountain. So,
Okay.
Yeah. Mine came from two verses that like Psalm 121, 1 and 2 says, I look to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And then there's also a verse in Psalm where it talks about how he made the mountains and the valleys and the water divide and all. And so it's just a reminder that God created the mountains and the valleys. And I just love looking at the mountains. So that's kind of how the name came.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I like that.
Very good. Tom, what about you? Any woodworking or anything in the shop?
Yeah, I've got one wooden sign I'm working on, and we use a lot of wooden spoons and they're all old and crap, and I've never made any. I know that's odd to be a woodworker and never made any, but I'm gonna actually make us some new wooden utensils this week if I have time. I'm trying to, but I've got a big side bus wrap that'll take 3 days to do. And so that'll take up some time. And I've got to finish building some garden beds outside. We're getting ready to put in we're going to take part of the farm and turn it into a lavender farm. And so I got going to put in 280 lavender plants here in the next week. So,
Wow.
yeah.
We have a lavender bush on the side of our house. And when we first bought this place, I've told the story before. Julie, she'll probably laugh at this. I'm mowing the grass and I kept getting hit by this stupid bush. Now, mind you, when we moved in here, it was past the season where lavenders were out, right? I kept getting, and so one day I stopped the mower, turned it off, went and grabbed my chainsaw, and just just chomped it off. I was like, yeah, good. And so I mowed. And I told my wife, I says, I finally chomped off that bush that kept smacking me in the face on the side of the house. She's like, you didn't cut my lavender bush, did you? I said, that was lavender? She's like, I was like, uh-oh. And so anyway, it's grown back and it's fine. But yeah, I chopped off one of the main trunks that was coming out and hit me in the face. So, and lavenders are strange. We had a week of bloom, maybe. They were out for a week, and I'd sniff them when I got hit in the face in the mower, and outside of that, they're already dead, like shriveled up now.
The funny thing about lavender, I just went and took a class from a lady that's she's the icon lavender person here in Colorado. And dude, there's like 450 different varieties of lavender, and some of them grow big, like what you see. And when you see these photos of these humongous fields of lavender, those are I forget how you pronounce it. Don't even ask me how to pronounce that long word. But they get really big and they're kind of aromatic, and that's what you see a lot of oils and stuff made out of. And then English lavender, they only get 18 to 24 inches. They're much smaller. They don't produce as much oil, but man, the scent is much sweeter. And so we're going to be growing a bunch of culinary lavender is what we're going to do. And then some lavenders for my wife to make soaps and lotions and things of that sort. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't have a green thumb at all. I am where plants go to die. So that's not where I'm skilled.
Yeah. My wife is the green thumb in our family. Like my wife has, and God gives all of us different skills. And, if my wife were to try to build something, every time she touches one of my tools, I about have a heart attack. And like, and she tries to put something together. I'm like, honey, just let me do it. So that is not her talent. But man, if she touches a plant, it just grows. Like she just has this natural gift of growing things. And that's where she loves to be, is out planting her pots with flowers and vegetables in the garden. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have done some extremely fine woodworking this weekend. I've made carpenter bee traps. We've got some carpenter bees that are flying around the back of the house. They're not getting anywhere. I don't know what they're doing. And so, funny story, I built carpenter bee traps back in like 2018, 2019. And I built so many that it paid for our vacation to Florida. And so I got back into my carpenter bee mind, and I made a bunch of traps, and I put some out here at the property, and I'll probably sell some to the people I work with or something. But yeah, they're super easy to make. Literally, I could make a carpenter bee trap in under 3 minutes. Like, they're just so easy to make. But everybody, anybody that's a non-maker woodworker, they're like, oh, and they'll pay me money for them. I'm like, okay, here you go. But yeah, I've made some. It's one of those things too. It's so funny. All you makers out there, you guys know my feeling. So my wife, it was Thursday night, Friday night, she jumped in the shower. I went out to let the dogs out. I let the dogs out through the garage, and I turned around and I see my miter saw and some 4x4 sitting there. And while the dogs are outside, I made 2 carpenter bee traps, came back inside. My wife's like, why are you covered in sawdust? I'm like, oh, I made a couple carpenter bee traps. She's like, just now? Yeah. It's like, I just like that. It's like, I'm going to make them because I, was feeling it. But other than that, not too much woodworking wise. Actually, I got to make some more finish. I built up a big stock of my finish, and it's running down, and I got orders to fulfill. So I got to make some finish Willie's wood honey. So,
wow.
Yeah, if you didn't know, Julie, I started a company this year. I make hard wax oil finish. And so, yeah, Willie's Wood Honey is the name of it. And yeah, it's done pretty well. I try to keep up with it. But yeah.
I really want to learn more about the finer side of woodworking. I have stayed, and probably not good, but comfortably in working with reclaimed wood. It's like got character, and it doesn't require much,
right.
work. But I have such an appreciation for the finer side because it's so much effort, and it's so like detail oriented and stuff. And so that's cool. If I ever get into it more, I'm going to have to.
Now, what tools do you work with, like in your shop or your space? Like what are your main like tools?
I would say miter saw, table saw, orbital sander. I'm trying to think. I have like a circle cutting jig. That's nice. Yeah. I don't know, jigsaw. I use a jigsaw a ton, and a hand saw. What is that? Circular saw, I think. And yeah, so I just use really basic tools, and I'm like not that into tools. I think they're cool, and I enjoy them, and I love going to Home Depot, and it would be nice if I could afford all of them. But ultimately, I think I've just been really skilled at using what I find, or like just getting crafty with what's around. And this little workshop that I have had so much in it. It had a drill press, and just like some other tools, but like lots of scrap wood from the previous owner. And that's lasted me forever, just picking through what was left there and trying to use it. So
that's pretty cool. I don't consider myself artsy. I can draw stick figures, and I can build things, and I have a mechanical mind. And my wife is a stained glass artist, and so she does stained glass stuff. And something with those of you that have that art side of the brain, you can see something and be like, wow, I can make something out of that. Or like I can do something like that. To where that skill is something that I don't have. And so sometimes you don't need all the tools when you have a mind that can wrap your head around something.
Yeah. But the right tools make it easier. That's for sure.
I will say, when I got a nice table saw, it was like, oh wow, this is, you can not kill yourself on a table saw. So
this makes me so nervous.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, Julie, where can people find you at? Instagram and YouTube, anything like that? Website?
Yeah, my main platform, I would say, is Instagram. So it's at Modstik _designs. And I create a lot of content there trying to show what I do in the process a little bit. So I always try to point people there. But I also have a website that's modstikdesigns.com. And on most social media platforms, you can find me on TikTok or Facebook as well. And feel free to reach out on any of those for ideas or whatnot.
Go ahead and share how to spell Modstik, because it might not be like people think.
Right. So Modstik is Modstik. So just to make it just confusing enough that, it's a little complicated. But I think even if you put in like Google search Modstik Designs, however you put it in, it should bring up my stuff.
Very
awesome.
cool.
Very good. Well, Julie, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and awesome hearing how God has brought you through, right? I've always heard that saying that God did not stop Daniel from the lion's den as he brought him out of it, right? And so it's that idea that we think that if some think that if you're a Christian, you're not going to go through anything. And the reality is that we're just that much more susceptible to the enemy's plans, and we're a threat. But God will bring us out of it, and He is bigger than the things we go through. And so really appreciate your story. And everybody go check her out on Instagram and go buy some art from her and support her. So thank you, Julie. Well, until next time, I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.